What up, Wizards? It's Dev, although today I'm also a Lana War Elf. That's because we got some bite-sized previews here for Foundations from Wizards of the Coast today. Hot and piping off the stove. We got 3 new Planeswalkers. Well, they're not new. They're all reprints, which is either boring or exciting, depending on which side of that debate you're on. But always good to see some cards that we're going to have access to in Standard for 5 freaking years. Still cannot get over that about this set. But if you're a little bit worried that 5 years is going to wreck the Standard play experience because they're going to print a bunch of super powerful cards, hopefully this will assuage your fears slightly because they chose some pretty safe ones. Now, the first of these I want to look at today is Vivan Reed, originally printed a whole 5 years ago, wow, in Magic 2019. This is 5 mana, 3 and 2 green for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. You can +1 her to look at the top 4 of your library, put a creature or a land from among them into your hand, and then the rest go on the bottom in a random order. For -3, things kind of start to heat up here. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. Kind of cool. For -8, which is a lot, you get an emblem with creatures you control get +2/+2 and have vigilance, trample, and indestructible, which is a ridiculous emblem. And I'll remind you that we have Innkeeper's Talent in Standard. And if you get to the last mode on that one, if you level it up twice, then suddenly this comes down with 10 loyalty counters and can go ahead and ultimate, which is actually very cool. So a neat little overrun effect that includes indestructible is bananas. But destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. There's a lot of things that this blows up right now and keeps a couple of loyalty, right? So from Archfiend to the Dross, even to Deep Cavern Bat to Slick Shot to a whole lot of other stuff. Very Mastermind in Standard. I could keep going. Abhorrent Oculus, Haughty Djinn. Like, there's a ton of flyers that this kills. A plummet effect is all right in Standard. We see it on like Paw Patch Formation making main decks right now. But artifact and enchantment is good too, you know, for these outside cases of Simulacrum Synthesizer. But also obviously like Urbrass Forge, they're important artifacts to blow up in Standard. And enchantments, don't even get me started, you know. There's obviously the Caretaker's Talent deck, but it goes way beyond that. People are playing these rooms and stuff now with a little bit more frequency. So there's a ton of enchantments this can blow up. Not to mention Overlords. This just kills Overlords with its -3. So a lot of cool stuff going on this card. Just when you look at potentially very good removal mode in current day Standard, along with a nice little piece of selection as well on the +1. I don't hate this at all, but I don't think that it's quite good enough compared to other things we have in the 5-drop slot. You're going to be 5 mana in Standard. You need to be very playable. Right now there's Overlord of the Hauntwoods, but I feel like that's more of a 3-drop than a 5-drop. And if you play it on turn 3, helps ramp you into Vivian on the next turn. So, you know, maybe there's something cooking right there, but I really don't think so. I could see this as like a one-of sometimes in certain like mid-range piles. There are times where I play the like 5 to 7 mana, you know, completed Nissa, just because I really like her -1. And it's basically, you know, destroy target artifact or enchantment, a disenchant effect. This one also includes a creature with flying on it. So I could see if I'm going to play, you know, 5 mana and pay 4 life for that Nissa, maybe I'll play Vivian every now and again, right? So I think there's arguments for the card in Standard, but really is just like a one of, maybe in the main deck, sometimes in the sideboard of like very different kind of mid-range piles that don't have access to better removal or better selection than this. But, you know, we see Golgari right now. Let's just talk about that for half a second. I'm not sure this is a better 5-drop than, say, Aclazotz and Golgari or Gix's Command, but maybe alongside those, you get a great -3 in that deck if you wanted more removal. It's really good in Standard right now, but the +1 helps you find not only lands, but obviously, you know, Aclazotz and Sheldrids and Glissas and Mosswood Dread Knights and all kind. That deck plays enough creatures to where this +1 is actually pretty good. So I don't know, maybe it's already got a home in Standard, but I'm not like super convinced that this is a super hot card, man. But, you know, it's kind of where I want Foundations cards to be, by and large, is like somewhat playable in Standard in this or that deck here and there. And in this case, again, a Silver Bullet in a mid-range deck here and there. I think it's a good like role-playing spot for this card without it being too crazy for 5 years in Standard. So I think they hit the mark pretty well here. But next, let's look at a Johnny Colar of the Pride printed in Magic 2013. Can you imagine that long ago was even a thing, that life existed before 2014? It's insane, right? But anyway, this is 3 mana, 1 and 2 white for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker. If you +1 him, you put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 guy. -3, target creature gains flying and double strike until end of turn. That's not bad. And then -8, create X 2/2 white cat creature tokens, X being your life total. So kind of interesting in like life gain decks, right? Because like a lot of the creatures in those decks do already have flying, but very few of them have double strike. This is a way to give your Amalia flying and double strike, or your Essence Channeler flying and double strike if you can't like lose life to give it flying that turn. All kind of cool, you know. +1/+1 counters are fine. I guess there's the Botanical Brawler like Selesnya deck right now this could go into, but I don't even think. Well, actually, that deck would want it. Give your Botanical Brawler or something, you know, flying and double strike. You're into that. We already know that there's a card in this set due to Maro's teaser that cares about cats, right? Like the number of cats you control. So I guess the ultimate helps you do that, but I'm not sure you're going to be ultimating this too much, unless again there's like a Selesnya deck with Innkeeper's Talent that can throw this down and immediately ultimate it, and that might be cool, but it takes a really long time in a game to be able to get there, I would assume. So well, turn 5, right? Because turn 2 you play Innkeeper's Talent, turn 3 you level it up, turn 4 you level it up, turn 5 you Ajani, do this, but then you did nothing else the whole game, so you have your life total is like 2 if you did that, if you even survived. So that's not great. But again, maybe some sort of Selesnya or Abzan life gain deck could leverage this ultimate somehow. But this is more of just like a traditional value sort of Planeswalker. This is how they used to build them. You know, and it's not too broken. We're a little afraid of these. But the -3 ability is the one that sticks out as the most busted one. You know, like even if you just give a Biza flying and double strike, okay, take 8 out of nowhere. That seems okay. And again, along with Innkeeper's Talent, if you get to the mode where you can put extra counters on stuff, then it's +1 gets a little bit better. So bringing that card up an awful lot this video, but it makes sense because I'm talking about Planeswalkers, you know. But I'm not sure, just like Vivian, I'm not sure that Ajani is great, but the -3 is kind of scary to have in standard for the next 5 years because it just ends games, you know, like especially depending on how good your 2-drop was. You can drop Ajani, immediately -3 him, keep him in play. You know, you get a Planeswalker in this ridiculous flying and double strike ability, all in the same turn, and that's again like the most terrifying thing about this card is the spell he casts as soon as he hits the table. So, and if you want to tick him up to 5, that's not a bad loyalty for a 3 or a mana Planeswalker, and you get a little bit of value the turn he comes into play, make a dude a little bit larger. So, you know. In terms of tick up inevitability, he's not the best thing I've ever seen, but, you know, he's only 3 mana, so you got to give him that. 3 mana is really cheap. So, you know, maybe I'm undervaluing Ajani a little bit, but I'm not too scared of him or anything. But again, man, depending on the 2-drop, like on curve, this could be like very, very just very frightening. So just keep him in mind. I don't think that he's unplayable in standard. I've seen a couple people use that word today already, and it's like, you're not seeing the -3. Like, I really don't think that you are, because that -3 is, what's another word for terrifying, frightening, scary? It makes me have to change clothes. But there's one more Planeswalker I want to look at today, and I think it's far and away the most powerful and exciting to have in standard of these new Planeswalkers. It's Big Lily style, baby. Liliana Dreadhorde General from War of the Spark is back, and this is easily the most expensive of these new Planeswalkers. I'm pretty sure you can get Vivian for under $1. Ajani's like $1.50 to $2 right now. It's been reprinted a few times. Liliana has not been reprinted too often, and it holds a value of like $15 to $17. And it's been about that much since it's been in standard. That's because this is a very good, you know, commander Planeswalker for what that's worth. It's got a great passive. And it's got an each player ability, so that's pretty sick. But let's talk about what the card actually does in case you forgot it, or you just, maybe you weren't playing Magic at the time. Could be. Maybe you're taking a break. I don't know. 6 mana, 4 and 2 black for a 6 loyalty Planeswalker. That's a lot of loyalty. Even for 6 mana, that's kind of a lot. The passive here is whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. Nuts. Absolutely nuts. For a +1, you get a 2/2 black zombie creature token. For a -4, each player sacrifices 2 creatures of their choice. I'm pretty sure that's new. I think that might be new wording, because normally it would just be each player sacrifices 2 creatures, but they threw of their choice on there to make it slightly more understandable. And for -9, the ult on this is each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacks the rest. I'm going to say Innkeeper's Talent like one more time here, because this is a kind of sick ultimate to just throw down and go ahead and, you know, boil off. And still have some loyalty left, like 3 loyalty left if you have the Innkeeper's Talent on 3. So Gross, but again, with Planeswalkers, we mostly talk about like their first couple of good abilities, and on here, the passive is really the main event. And it's easy to forget about the passive when you're reading the other abilities, right? So her +1 is kind of card advantage because the 2/2 zombie will die and you'll draw cards. The -4 is card advantage because like you're all coming down on 2 creatures, but you're the only one that draws 2 cards, like up to 2 cards. Because, you know, obviously you can throw this down with no creatures in play, and then it's not, you know, symmetrical effect anymore. It's just sack 2 creatures, and that tends to be pretty good, depending on what you're playing against. But, you know, even if you do have to come down on board presence, you're drawing cards, and that's crazy. It's just very, very good, especially considering Planeswalker abilities don't cost any mana. So if you're able to untap with Lily in play, use her -4, draw 2 cards, all your mana is open, you just drew 2, you're feeling very pretty. You know what I mean? Like, I feel physically attractive at this moment. So just, it's a great -4 because of the card draw. But again, just ticking up, like going up to 7 and getting a blocker to help protect her. And if that blocker dies, you draw a card. So nuts, you know, like if they want to blast the blocker with a removal spell and then attack into Liliana, again, she still got you something. She still drew you a card or whatever. And it's going to be hard to attack her down with enough dudes, right? Depending on how you've set up the Lily. In standard right now, you go from like Deadly Cover Up into Liliana, and that seems like a very good play to me. But this could also go in a sort of more slow rolly, control-y sort of Aristocrats Sacrifice shell. And we've already got Vein Ripper at the 6-drop slot for that deck, so I'm not really sure this fits where I want it to in that pile. But, you know, there's a couple of places it could go, but you have to, again, just like a couple of the other ones we've looked at, compare it to other things we could be playing in this slot. And I think Vraska, the 5 to 6 mana completed Vraska, might just be better than Liliana. I'm not like convinced that it is. It all depends again on what deck you're playing, the setup that you have. If you're bringing creatures back from the graveyard and they die again, you bring them back and they die again. Like, there's a lot of ways to set up Liliana here, obviously. But again, I think Vraska is going to be better for the Innkeeper's Talents decks, ironically, or maybe not. Maybe that's not the proper use of that term, but still. I think that it's going to be better in the Innkeeper's Talents decks. You only have so much room for 6 drops in your standard deck unless you're ramping. But again, just like Vivian, we got to go back to Golgari, which does sometimes play, 7-drop Planeswalkers in the sideboard. You'll see like a splash for Kaya. You'll see Breach the Multiverse in those decks some of the time. You'll obviously see Virtue of Persistence, which is kind of cheating. It's a 2-drop, but it's also a 7-drop they can get to. So it's not like it's unheard of for these Golgari decks to play like really expensive cards. And, we see the mono white decks will play 1 to 2 copies of the Eternal Wanderer, and that's a 6-drop Planeswalker, So again, not unheard of in standard to play a 6-drop and especially a 6-drop Walker, but I'm just not really sure exactly where it fits. The Golgari example again, that deck does play enough creatures, right? So if you Mosswood Dread Knight, draw a card, then play the Mosswood Dread Knight out of exile. It dies, draws you a card because you have a Lily. You can then play it out of exile, draw cards. You're drawing a ton of cards with just Mosswood Dread Knight. But when they inevitably kill your Deep Cavern Bat, you draw a card. When you do hit a sweeper, you're going to draw, a couple of cards off of that sweeper, making it not so, again, symmetrical. So that's all good, man. And it's just a pretty nice card that did some stuff the last time it was in standard. If it were up to me and we had to reprint a 6-mana Liliana into standard, I would have taken Professor Onyx. But I think this is still great. I've always loved this, not just this passive, but this line of text. On like Midnight Reaper and Morbid Opportunist and cards like that, it's always super powerful, even if you have to pay 6 mana for it. But if you can find a way to control your way into getting this card down safely, and securing it, locking it onto the table, then it's always been really, really difficult to beat this card. So again, I think this is probably, without a doubt, the most powerful card that we got to see today. I mean, you look at the prices and tell that much, but when you look at actual like gameplay applications, the reason the price this card is so high, it's already good in Commander, but it was good the last time it was in Standard. I don't really expect that to change here. That's it. I am hype about this Liliana. Again, even though I say stuff like, well, we'd rather have Professor Onyx, like I'm still really excited to have this card in Standard. Again, I like the implications for a slower sort of Aristocrats deck. But again, remains to be seen. I think this is more of a control card, kind of always has been a mid-rangey control, like top-end, mid-range engine sort of thing. You don't even have to play a ton of creatures in your deck. It just works with the +1, you know. So just a sick card that's sort of self-contained and self-sustaining, and those cards are typically powerful even if you have to come off this much mana for them. So a lot of cheese, but, you know, when it melts, it's delicious. That's all I'm going to say. But that's all I've got for this one, y'all. Let me know how you felt about these down there in the comments. What do you think the red and blue walkers will be? This is Jace. Jace is in the background of this very picture right now, so I assume we get Jace as one of the Planeswalkers, right? But that leaves the red one to be desired. Vivian's here, so I guess Garrick died of old age. It's been that long since we've seen him. Where is the old man? But still, just let me know what you want to see in this set, what you think the other two walkers are. They appear to all be reprints, but I'm not sure at this point. It doesn't mean they all have to be just because these were, right? But just let me know your thoughts down there in the comments section. They always lead to an interesting discussion. Apart from that, do the YouTube stuff on your way out. Hit the button shaped like a thumb. It's helpful and beneficial to me in some way or another. That's what they tell me. That is the legend. That is the myth. But apart from that, sub to the sandwich so that you get these spoilers when they do come out. Preview season starts on Friday. We're going to get a bunch of stuff that day, plus previews from other upcoming sets that aren't Foundations. Big day. Make sure you're subbed to this channel for that. I was going to say sandwich again, might as well. Sub to the meatball for that. And I guess check out the Patreon. Really keeps this whole operation going. And again, quite beneficial, I'm told. It hits my bank account every month, and I get to like pay my rent and stuff. So it's kind of important to me. But anyway, you want to keep the op going. Check out the Patreon link in the description. But that's all I've got for now. I will catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.